Hey, I'm Josh, and this is Beyond the Numbers, Voices from the Field, where we get these awesome volunteers to come in and just share not only their heart, but their expertise. And so today we are joined by Christina. Christina, would you introduce yourself, tell the viewers just a little bit about you, your heart, what you're doing? Go for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Josh. Hey, everyone. My name is Christina. I currently live in PA, but I was born and raised in Rhode Island. I'm currently working at the University of Valley Forge, serving there as the student account specialist. But I recently graduated with my master's in theology from the University of Valley Forge. And then I also have an undergraduate degree in youth ministry. And then I also serve at my youth group, and I lead worship there on Wednesday nights.
So just a little bit of juggling, like
just
between...
a little bit, just here
yes.
and there,
We're in this series that we've been going through. We're talking a lot about really getting to the heart of how the church needs to be careful because they risk losing that next generation. So we're just going to jump right in with my first question, which is, what is something that you feel like churches often misunderstand about your generation?
Yeah, absolutely. One misunderstanding that I think the church may have about my generation specifically is that my generation is very closed off altogether. But the truth is that my generation actually has a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions, and we're all looking for answers. But the problem is that we're looking for answers in not necessarily the right spots. We're looking on social media. We're looking on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, even though Facebook is more my specific age group and not so much the younger age bracket.
It's kind of like MySpace, I guess, years ago for me, so I'm old.
Right, yeah. But I think it's that, the generation is closed off to, the whole conversation about religion or Christianity or Jesus altogether. But, that's a common misconception altogether. It's just the fact that we do have a lot of questions, and a lot of us just don't know where to turn. And so I think that's where oftentimes the church really has that misconception, and we need to really turn back and say, okay, maybe we need to focus on, here are the questions that we have. How are we going to answer them?
No, that's really good, because you look at even AI. I've done the whole AI, like asking random questions. We have a kitten, and the kitten lost a tooth, but I was like, what is this thing? And it's like, well, the kitten lost the tooth. Like, we go to all these different things for answers, but especially when it comes to, theological stuff, when it comes to who God is, going to those right sources is like such a huge thing. When it comes to those questions and really finding themselves comfortable enough in our church spaces to ask those questions, what do you think makes young adults feel like they actually truly belong to a church?
Yeah, and going off of that, it's them looking for that involvement in that relationship, and that comfortability to ask those questions. The reason why we're going to all of those outside resources is because we don't feel comfortable to ask those hard questions. And as young adults, we want to feel heard. And so it's very easy to hide behind the screen because there's no really face-to-face contact, and there's no risk of being misheard when there's another person quickly coming at you with their own opinion or their own advice without with that interruption. And throughout my research within my master's degree, one of the key points that really stood out in most of the interviews that I had to conduct was that a lot of young adults just felt like they weren't heard. And because of that, it actually turned them away from the aspect of going to church altogether, which is part of the reason why we are losing so many young adults in the church, is because the church just doesn't sit and say, okay, what are the questions that you have?
If you have these questions, how would you hope that someone from the church would actually come up and not be like a burden, not overwhelm you, but like get you to feel like you're comfortable enough to open up?
Part of that meaningful discipleship and mentorship looks like an investment. And it's not something that happens within a short span of time. It's not something that is like a quick, hey, welcome to church, and within the first 5 minutes, tell me every single question you have. It's something that happens over weeks, months, maybe even years. For example, I actually remember when I first started that mentorship relationship that I have with my mentor right now. It's someone in your life where you have those hard conversations. And when I first came to her and I said, hey, I'm just, I have a lot of questions in life, and I'm looking for someone who will sit down and have those questions with me. Would you be willing to be that person with me? And when we were communicating those expectations with each other, she was just very, very patient with me. And she said, hey, like, if we do this, one of those things is to be completely vulnerable. And that is one thing that, it's people in our generation, we understand that with those questions comes that vulnerability. But at the same time, that meaningful discipleship doesn't mean we have to avoid those hard topics either. And so if people in the church truly want to, say, what are those hard questions that you have? What are those hard topics that you have? Sometimes it starts with just simply saying, hey, how was your day? And forming that relationship, forming that bond with an individual, because you have to gain their trust before you can have those hard conversations.
That's good, because trust takes time, and sometimes we want everything to be quick, and that's not. I mean, for most generations, but especially for your generation, you guys have seen through a lot of the fake stuff, and so building a real relationship is something that's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. Can you give us a little like behind the scenes, like how did you figure out this is someone that I think is worth being a mentor to me?
Yeah, so it was actually someone that is a trusted pastor at my church already. So it was actually quite easy for me to just ask her. But actually, it wasn't starting out as me asking her directly. I actually went to her originally and just said, hey, is there someone in the church who would be willing? And she actually stepped forward and said I would be willing. And so it led to me asking her.
That's awesome.
So that's just the way that the Lord really worked it out, and I'm very grateful for that. We've been meeting for about consistently for about 1.5 years, 2 years now. So it's been such a huge blessing. Even that step at first was such a nerve-wracking thing, but at the time I was like, I have so many questions, and another aspect is the more questions that we have as young adults, the more weighed down and burdened we feel by them. And so we get to this point in our lives where we're like, okay, enough is enough. It's time for us to actually start to share them or find the answers. And I just reached the point in my life where I was like, I want legit answers. Like I don't want to just go to social media anymore and find those answers that way. And it's interesting that our initial reaction isn't to go to scripture, it's to go to social media.
Yeah.
And so I think having those mentors and having that discipleship, that mentorship one-on-one, has actually trained me to go back to scripture first than to go to anything else first.
Sometimes people are very well-intentioned and they dig bigger holes in that well-intention. What's something that church leaders sometimes do with those good intentions, but they actually accidentally push some of the young adults away?
They're so passionate about wanting to lead young people and creating this atmosphere where where they want to help. But sometimes the younger generation can see that as the older generation is putting pressure on me. They're putting pressure on me to conform to their ways, or to think like them, or to do this or to do that, and it ends up pushing them away, because either A, they feel like they're trying to the older generation is trying to get them to do something that they don't really know what they're doing, or B, they just don't understand what's going on, and they're not. It's like going back to that idea of they're not feeling heard, and because they're not feeling heard, it's like the older generation is trying to be quick to, because they see the problem, they want to fix the problem, or they hear the question, they want to quickly answer the question, but instead of just listening to the entirety of what's going on. But it comes back to this idea that, the passion is there, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no mistaking that. The passion is there of the older generation to help the younger generation. But the younger generation is like, hold on, I don't know what's going on. We need to slow down here for a second.
And I laugh because I am by nature a fixer, and I get myself into trouble with that, whether it be with sometimes my students, or sometimes even with my wife, where she just wants to be heard and I want to fix her problems. And oftentimes that gets me in trouble. So that's really good. So maybe that's kind of a piece of the next question. But if the church genuinely wants to reach the next generation, where should they start?
Yeah, I think this is a great question because this is actually one of the main parts of my thesis that I just wrote. And so I presented like a 3-step plan kind of in my thesis for this very question. The first step that I wrote about was the invitation, right? Invite the young people in, because the invitation is what creates that sense of belonging. It starts to create that sense of relationship that young adults are really looking for, especially if that young adult doesn't have a relationship with the Lord. If that young adult has no idea what's going on. I mean, my thesis was about the church's role in ministering to the LGBTQ plus community, and so it's vastly different than what we're specifically talking about today. But in that thesis, a lot of the interviews that I did, they were like, I don't even go to church, and not one person has ever invited me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so young adults are really looking for, like, what if one person would just invite me to church? What if one person, especially, in the time that we are in, what if one person would just take the time and invite me to church? And this invitation can be the first step in creating that meaningful relationship where those crucial questions can start being asked, and the answers can start being given, and those connections can start being formed. And then from there, the second step is, once those connections are starting to be formed, that's when correction can start being given. One of the huge things within our generation is we don't let people speak into our lives unless we trust them. And so if someone just saw that I was doing something wrong and they were like, you can't be doing that, I don't think that I would really give them the time of day if I didn't know who they were. But, if my mentor came up to me and said, hey, I noticed this, we need to start correcting this, then I would 100% say, okay, I like, we should definitely fix this, and I appreciate like that you would call me out for it. And so it would only be after, that relationship is formed that the correction could be given.
So many times we try the opposite. We're like, we correct them, and then I'll build a relationship.
Right. And that's why a lot of young adults are turning away, because these steps are reversed. Mm-hmm. And so because the correction is given before the relationship is formed, it feels more attacking than it does caring.
Yeah.
And so they're like, the church hurt me, the church attacked me, I don't want to be here anymore. And so that's the second step. And then lastly, the church can continue to foster like this atmosphere of growth within the next generation. And this may look like creating one-on-one discipleship groups, or even group discipleship, and just creating like that aspect of mentorship. And it's so cool how, in my life personally, how it's gone like 180 to where I now have the opportunity to mentor people.
That's awesome.
Like I have a couple people under me now, and it's just an amazing opportunity how the Lord has used that.
That's awesome. And I love, I mean, it's a pastoral thing, 3 steps. But it's 3 steps. They're not difficult. It's just in the right order, and then also like really committing to those things.
Yeah.
Like that's huge for so many people that want like the hack on how to get the younger generations into the church. It's like
Right.
a lot of it is, take that step and be real to them. If a pastor's listening into this conversation, a ministry leader, maybe someone that's just utterly frustrated with
Mm-hmm.
how they feel like not many young people are in the church, or they're not engaging with the younger generation, what's one piece of advice that you would give to them if unfortunately some of us, we only pay attention to like one thing? What's one piece of advice you would give to them?
Yeah, it would be to start forming those meaningful relationships now, and don't be so quick to jump on that correction train with the first conversation you get. Be quick to listen first, and yes, like we can start to identify where correction is needed from the first conversation, but correction doesn't need to be given at the first conversation. So be quick to listen. Quick to listen first, form that relationship first, and then allow the Holy Spirit to guide each step.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much these are really great insights. It's, as we said, it's not super difficult, but it's like actually doing it and doing it with a heart for it, which is just really awesome. And I love the insights that you brought in. Before we leave, is there any ministry, anything personally that you want to promote or just let any viewers that are there know about?
Yeah, I think one of the texts that I would love to share is actually a book that I read in my undergrad. It's called Sticky Faith by Dr. Powell. It's a great book. Yes, perfect. Yeah, I have it right here too. Yes. Yeah, it's just great because it confronts the fact that students are leaving the faith, but it also shifts the focus to discipleship and how to create a faith that lasts a lifetime. And I just think it's a great text to read, especially about this topic.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again for your insights, and then just not only insights for being a younger person, but just the work that you put in. And I know you said it was a different topic or whatever, but especially with what your thesis and what your paper was all about, and the interviews that you did, because I think that's another area that the church is struggling to. They go to one or two of the extremes, and so that's just awesome. Love your heart behind it. All right, well, this was Josh talking with Christina. Again, awesome heart. And just the things that God is doing through her and allowing her to be a part of is really, really awesome. If you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I would just love extra steps, I would love to know what to do next, or maybe you just have a heart for the next generation, this is a conversation that we're continuing on for the next few weeks as we dive in to look at how we don't lose a generation in the midst of all these different changes and all that's going on in the world, how to really win their hearts. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for joining me on Beyond the Numbers. Have a good day.